A poor single dad helped a dying woman on a cold, deserted street, unaware she was a billionaire CEO whose signature quietly controlled half the city. But the moment his trembling hands lifted her from the ground, something in her fading eyes locked onto him as if she recognized a man the world had overlooked. Elijah Carter had nothing except overdue rent, a broken car, and a little daughter who still believed her dad was a hero, but he didn't hesitate when he saw the dying woman collapse beside the bus stop. He chose compassion over fear, humanity over his own struggle. But he had no idea the poor single dad he was would be the very man who would shatter the billionaire CEO's hidden past. The dying woman, Vivian Hale, one of the most powerful and feared CEOs in the country, clutched his wrist with the last strength she had, whispering a warning that made his heart freeze. But why would a billionaire CEO look at a poor single dad like she'd been searching for him her whole life? Why did her voice crack with familiarity? What secret tied a poor single dad and a billionaire CEO together in a way that would shock everyone? And what exactly was she planning to do next, now that he had unknowingly saved her life? Elijah Carter never imagined the night would break him before it blessed him. The sharp winter wind slapped his face as he tugged his worn jacket closer around himself, the thin fabric barely shielding him from the cold. He had just finished another grueling shift at the auto shop, hands aching, fingers blackened with grease that never fully washed off, and his mind spinning with numbers he couldn't seem to outrun. Rent overdue by 2 months, daycare fees doubled, groceries getting smaller each week. But even with exhaustion pressing down on him, the image of his little daughter Ava, sleeping with her tiny palm beneath her cheek, kept him walking. He whispered to himself, like he always did, "Just one more day, Elijah. One more day you hold the line." The bus stop ahead flickered under a faulty streetlight. Elijah didn't like this route, but his car had died again, and he couldn't afford repairs. Ironic for a mechanic, he thought. Life had a way of mocking him. The street was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that made sound echo back in strange, lonely ways. Then he noticed someone, slumped beside the metal bench. At first, he thought it was a drunk, just another lost soul on a cold night. But there was something too still, too fragile, too wrong about the way the figure leaned. "Elijah, keep moving," a voice in his head murmured. He had responsibilities, he had Ava. He couldn't get involved in something dangerous. But then another voice, the one his late mother had ingrained in him, answered, "If you walk away from someone who needs help, you walk away from who you are." That voice always won. He approached cautiously, his breath fogging the air. The figure was a woman, her hair spread across her shoulder like silver silk under the streetlight. She wore a coat finer than anything he'd ever seen, tailored wool, dark navy, delicate stitching, but it was soaked at the collar with something darker than water. Blood. Shock jolted through him. Hey, can you hear me?" he whispered, dropping to his knees. Her eyelids trembled and she forced them open. The moment her gaze met his, Elijah froze. Her eyes, sharp, icy, almost commanding, softened when they landed on his face as if she saw something familiar, something she'd been needing. "You," she breathed out, the word trailing with pain. Elijah swallowed hard. "Don't talk, I'm calling 911. He reached for his phone, but her fingers shot out and clutched his wrist with surprising strength. The movement was desperate, urgent. "No, listen," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Not the police. Not yet. They can't know I'm here." Elijah blinked, confused. Who was afraid of the police? Criminals, fugitives? But her clothes, her jewelry, her bearing, nothing about her screamed danger. Everything about her screamed power. Her breath shook as she tried to sit up, and Elijah steadied her gently. She winced, gripping his jacket, holding onto him as if the world beneath her was shifting. He saw then the faint emblem near the cuff of her coat. Hale Enterprises, a company so massive the name alone felt like its own world. Elijah had heard that name his whole life. Offices in every state, industries ranging from biotech to aviation. A titan of an empire, a billionaire empire. His eyes widened. This couldn't be real. This dying woman, she couldn't be. "I need you to trust me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't run. They tried to kill me." Elijah felt his chest tighten. This wasn't just a medical emergency. This was danger circling like wolves in the dark. He tried again. "Ma'am, just let me get you to a hospital." Her fingers tightened painfully. "You saved me. You'll know why soon. But not now. Please." Her voice cracked and her eyes fluttered. Elijah hesitated, torn, but then he saw something he didn't expect. Fear. Real, human fear. Billionaires didn't look afraid. CEOs didn't beg. But she wasn't begging for herself. Her voice carried the weight of something bigger. A warning. "Okay," Elijah murmured, his voice trembling. "Okay, I'm here. Just hold on." He lifted her carefully, shocked at how light she was. Her head fell against his shoulder, and for a moment, he felt her breath weaken. A chill shot through him. He didn't know who this woman was beyond her luxurious coat and haunted eyes, but he knew she was someone the world depended on, and someone the wrong people wanted gone. As he carried her toward the street, her final whisper sliced into him, a whisper so strange, so impossible, it rooted itself inside him. "They'll come for you too, Elijah." He stopped dead. How did a billionaire CEO know his name? And what horrifying thing was about to begin now that he had stepped into her world? Elijah's arms ached as he helped the woman, Vivian Hale, though he still wasn't fully certain, into the backseat of a taxi whose driver stared at them with wide, nervous eyes. The cab smelled faintly of pine air freshener and worn leather, but all Elijah could focus on was the frail body slumped beside him. Her breathing was shallow, her skin cold, and every few seconds she drifted in and out of consciousness, as if fighting an invisible force pulling her under. Elijah kept checking her pulse, terrified it might disappear between one heartbeat and the next. "Where to?" the driver asked, eyes flicking nervously to the blood-staining Vivian's coat. Elijah swallowed. Vivian's earlier warning echoed in his mind. "No police. They can't know I'm here." If he took her to a hospital, protocol would bring the police instantly. If he took her home, Ava would see everything. And if he took her anywhere else, he didn't know who was chasing her or why she knew his name. "Elijah?" Vivian's voice was a whisper, barely audible. He leaned closer. "I'm right here. Just tell me where to go." She struggled for a moment, her lips trembling. Then, "Eastwood, private clinic. Ask for Dr. Rowan." Elijah relayed the instructions. The moment the taxi pulled away, he glanced down and caught her staring at him, not just in confusion, but with a mixture of guilt and recognition that didn't make sense. He couldn't shake the feeling she had seen him before. But how? A poor single dad from the rough side of Maple Ridge had no business ever crossing paths with a billionaire CEO. As they drove through the city lights, Elijah's thoughts spiraled back into memories he had tried to bury. His mother, coughing violently on the kitchen floor the night she refused to call an ambulance because she didn't want her debt to grow. The landlord banging on the door demanding payment 2 days after her funeral. The nights he held Ava close, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. And now, here he was, holding a woman whose wealth could buy hospitals, judges, cities, yet suffering in his arms like she had no one. A strange guilt washed over him. Why would someone like her be alone on a dark street with no security, no driver, no assistant? What had she been running from? The taxi jerked to a stop at a quiet corner where the Eastwood Private Clinic stood tucked between two tall buildings like a secret. It wasn't a regular hospital. Elijah recognized it by reputation. Politicians went there, celebrities, people who valued privacy over paperwork, the kind of place a billionaire CEO would choose if she didn't want her name on public records. Elijah carried her inside. The lobby was quiet, the walls white and sleek, machines humming softly in the background. A single nurse looked up from her desk, and the moment she recognized Vivian, her face drained of color. "Oh my God, Dr. Rowan, now!" she shouted, rushing toward them. Elijah placed Vivian on the nearest stretcher as medical staff sprinted from every direction. A tall man with gray streaks in his hair, Dr. Rowan, took one look at her and snapped into action. "What happened?" he demanded. Elijah opened his mouth, but Vivian's weak voice cut through the chaos. "He saved me. Don't involve the police." Dr. Rowan exchanged a sharp, alarmed look with the nurse. "Understood." Elijah felt the room spin. These people knew something. They knew who she was, what danger she was in, and they were afraid. As they wheeled Vivian away, her hand shot out and grabbed Elijah's jacket again. Her eyes glistened with something, fear, gratitude, and an unspoken truth she wasn't ready to say. "You'll understand soon," she whispered, "why I knew your name." Elijah's breath caught. "Please, just tell me what's happening." "After they stabilize me," she murmured, her voice cracking, "there's something I need to give you." Her fingers slipped away as the medical doors closed behind her. Elijah stood alone in the hallway, trembling. The fluorescent lights buzzed above him, but the sound in his ears was the pounding of his own heart. A nurse approached him gently. "Sir, you should wait in the family lounge." Family, the word stung. He had no family left except Ava, but he followed her anyway, settling into a cold leather chair, staring at the wall as the minutes dragged painfully by. He kept replaying Vivian's whisper. How did she know him? What did she want to give him? And who was trying to kill her? A soft knock at the doorway pulled him from his spiraling thoughts. Dr. Rowan stepped in, his face stern, eyes filled with conflict. "She's stable, for now," he said. "But her condition is delicate, and what she told me to do is highly irregular." Elijah sat up. "What did she say?" Rowan studied him carefully, almost as if searching for the truth in Elijah's eyes. Then he sighed. "She asked me to take you to her private suite. She said she needs to speak to you immediately when she regains consciousness." Elijah frowned. "Why me? I'm just a mechanic. I barely know her." Rowan's voice dropped. "According to her, that's about to change." A chill slithered down Elijah's spine as he followed the doctor through the silent corridor. Vivian Hale, billionaire CEO, had entrusted him, with something important enough to invoke secrecy, fear, and urgency. As he reached the suite door, Elijah hesitated, gripping the frame. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet dread whispered, "Your life is no longer your own." And the moment that door opened, he would discover just how much everything he thought he knew was about to shatter. The quiet in Vivian Hale's private suite felt heavier than the silence of any hospital Elijah had ever been in. It wasn't the cold sterility of a regular room. It was the quiet of money, power, and secrets pressing against the walls. The curtains were half drawn, letting the city's lights bleed in like distant stars. Machines hummed softly beside the bed, tracing the fragile rhythm of Vivian's breathing. Elijah stood awkwardly near the door, hands clasped, heart pounding. He had no business being here. A poor, single dad with grease under his nails didn't belong anywhere near the world of billionaires. But fate, or something he didn't understand yet, had dragged him into this room. Vivian stirred, a soft groan slipping from her lips as she turned her head toward him. Even pale, bruised, and weak, she looked like someone carved from authority. Her eyes opened slowly, and when they met his, it felt like she was seeing an old ghost. "Elijah," she whispered his name again. Soft, deliberate, knowing. He stepped closer. "I'm here. You're safe now. The doctors said you're stable." She exhaled shakily, her eyes drifting to the ceiling before returning to his face. "Thank you for saving me." "You don't need to thank me," he said quickly. "Anyone would have done the same." Her faint smile told him she didn't believe that, and deep down, he knew she was right. Not everyone would lift a bleeding stranger with no guarantee they wouldn't be blamed, arrested, or dragged into danger. But Elijah had always been that kind of man. Too soft, too willing to help, too willing to sacrifice even when he had nothing. Vivian studied him, her voice fragile. "You remind me of someone." Elijah hesitated. "Do I know you?" Her eyes flickered. He saw conflict there, fear, guilt, and something almost like hope. She closed her eyes momentarily, gathering strength, then opened them again. "You don't know me," she said softly. "Not yet, but you knew someone connected to me. Someone important. Someone whose absence changed both our lives." A knot formed in Elijah's throat. His mind scrambled through memories, mechanics he'd helped, customers he'd met, neighbors from years past, but nothing made sense. "I don't understand," he said. Her hand lifted weakly, motioning for him to sit. He pulled a chair closer, sinking into it, feeling like a child sitting before a truth too big for him. Vivian let her fingers trace the blanket, as if drawing courage from the fabric. "When I was younger," she began, "before the boardroom, before the empire, before the billions, I wasn't the woman people know today. I was just a girl trying to survive in a world that felt too cruel. I ran away from home at 17. I lived in shelters, worked whatever jobs I could find. And during that time, I met someone who changed everything." Her voice grew distant, slipping into a memory. "He was kind, genuine. He had nothing, yet he gave everything. He used to tell me that people weren't defined by their money, but by what they offered when they had nothing to spare. He was the first person who made me believe in goodness, the first person who ever protected me." Her voice wavered. Elijah leaned in, listening hard, heart tightening. "His name," she whispered, "was Daniel Carter." Elijah froze. His father. The world tilted. Air caught in his lungs. His father had died years ago, a man of humble life, warm heart, and unwavering kindness. Elijah had lived most of his life trying to live up to the memory of a man who never once raised his voice, who taught him compassion above pride. Vivian saw his face shift, and she nodded. "Yes, Elijah," she murmured. "I knew your father." Elijah felt the floor drop out beneath him. "That's impossible. My father he never mentioned you." Her eyes glistened. "Because I wasn't supposed to exist in his future. I disappeared from his life before he could choose me over everything else he cared about. I left without explaining. I pushed him away for reasons that made sense then, but haunted me ever since." Elijah swallowed hard. 100 questions burned through him. Vivian forced her trembling hand toward him. He took it instinctively, feeling how cold she still was. "Your father saved me," she whispered. "He saved me when I was hardly worth saving. He gave me shelter, food, kindness. He gave me the strength to rebuild my life. And when I finally built something, when I became Vivian Hale, I searched for him." Tears welled in Elijah's eyes, anger, sadness, confusion blending into something sharp and aching. "Why didn't you find us?" he asked, voice breaking. "We struggled. My mom died young. Dad worked himself sick. We could barely afford anything." Vivian's face twisted with guilt. "I did find him," she said painfully. "But when I did, he was gone." Elijah's chest cracked open. His father had died suddenly of a heart attack while working a double shift. Elijah had been only 13. He remembered crying into the worn denim of his father's jacket, wishing the world would stop spinning. Vivian wiped a tear from her cheek. I owed him everything, and I never repaid him. I swore if I ever met someone connected to him, I would change their life the way he changed mine. Her fingers tightened weakly around Elijah's hand. That's why I knew your name, Elijah. I recognized your face. You look just like him. Emotion surged through him, grief, disbelief, and a strange, fragile warmth. But beneath it all, another question clawed forward. Who tried to kill you? He whispered. Vivian's eyes darkened. The same people who don't want you to receive what I'm about to give you. Elijah felt dread crawl down his spine. And what's that? Vivian inhaled shakily. My entire empire. Elijah stared at Vivian, stunned into a silence so deep it felt like the room itself had stopped breathing. Her entire empire, her billions, her legacy. The thought felt so absurd he wanted to laugh, but her eyes, clear now, steady despite the pain, held no hint of exaggeration. They held certainty, decision, and something else he couldn't fully name. Finality. I don't understand, he whispered, voice trembling. Why would you give something like that to me? Vivian inhaled slowly, the monitor beside her reflecting the fragile beat of her heart. Because Elijah, I am dying. The attack tonight wasn't random. It was the second attempt in 3 months. My board is split. My rivals are circling, and someone close to me wants what belongs to me, and they'll destroy anyone who stands between them and Hale Enterprises. Elijah's stomach twisted. But why drag me into this? I'm just... Not just anything, she interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. You are Daniel Carter's son. You are the living reminder of the only man who ever protected me without expecting a single thing in return. My father abandoned me. My siblings stole from me. My executives fear me. My lawyers use me. But your father... Her voice cracked under the weight of memory. Your father saved me because it was who he was, not because it benefited him. She reached for an envelope sitting on the bedside table, a thick, sealed document packet marked with her signature crest. Elijah didn't move, unsure if touching it would somehow seal him into a fate he didn't choose. Vivian pushed it gently toward him. This is a transfer of ownership, she whispered. My will, my shares, my authority, everything tied to Hale Enterprises is now bound to you, contingent on my death or incapacitation. Elijah recoiled. No, I can't accept this. I don't want your money. I don't want power. I have a daughter. I have a small life. I just want safety, she whispered. Stability, a future where Ava never has to live the life you've struggled through. Elijah felt tears burn behind his eyes. Hearing his daughter's name in this room, full of wealth and power, made something inside him ache. Vivian's voice softened further. Your father once told me, if I ever have a child, I want them to inherit kindness, not suffering. Elijah, you've lived more suffering than he ever wanted for you. He looked down at his hands, calloused, scarred, trembling. Hands that had fixed engines, carried groceries, wiped Ava's tears, held his father's hand at the funeral. Hands that had never held power of any kind. This will put a target on me, he said quietly, and on Ava. Vivian nodded slowly. It will, but the danger was already coming the moment you saved me tonight. They saw you. They followed me. Whoever orchestrated this knows I wasn't alone when I collapsed. His heart dropped. So they already know who I am? Yes. Her eyes softened with something closer to regret. Which means you have two choices. Walk away and leave your daughter defenseless against people who won't forget your face, or take what I'm giving you and gain the power to fight back." The room seemed to shrink, the air tightening around him. Elijah thought of Ava's laughter, the way she hugged him every morning, the way she believed he could fix anything, even broken dreams. He thought of his father, worn and tired, coming home late from double shifts so Elijah could have food. He thought of the life he'd lived, always at the mercy of bills, landlords, broken cars, and people with more power than he ever had. His father had protected Vivian once. Now Vivian was offering Elijah the means to protect his own daughter. He swallowed hard. "Who's behind this? Who tried to kill you?" Vivian's eyes hardened. "My half-brother, Marcus Hale." The name struck the air like a blade. Elijah had heard it before. Marcus Hale, the charismatic COO, the golden face of Hale Enterprises, publicly adored, internally feared. Vivian continued, voice trembling. "He's wanted the company for years. He believes it's his birthright. Tonight, he finally decided he was done waiting." Elijah felt anger rising, slow and steady. A man like Marcus would stop at nothing. If Elijah walked away, Marcus would finish what he started. A sudden knock snapped them both to attention. Dr. Rowan slipped inside, closing the door quickly. His expression was tight. "They're here," he whispered urgently. "Men in suits. They're asking for access to Vivian's room. I stalled them, but I can't hold them for long." Vivian's breathing quickened. "It's Marcus's people." Elijah's pulse skyrocketed. Danger wasn't coming. It was already inside the building. Rowan turned to Elijah, desperation in his eyes. "If you're going to leave, you need to leave now. Through the service elevator, I'll create a diversion." Vivian's hand trembled as she gripped Elijah's wrist. "Take the documents. Protect yourself. Protect Ava. And Elijah, don't let Marcus win." Her touch was cold, frail, fading. Elijah grabbed the packet with shaking hands. The weight of it felt unreal, like holding a detonator that could either destroy or save his life. Rowan ushered him toward the exit, but just before Elijah crossed the threshold, Vivian spoke one last time, her voice weak but unbreakable. "Elijah, your father believed in you before you were even born. I believe in you now. Run, and when the time comes, fight." Elijah's eyes burned as he nodded, swallowing the storm in his chest. He slipped out into the dim service hallway, just as heavy footsteps echoed from the main corridor. Men in suits, Marcus's men. Rowan pushed him forward. "Go!" Elijah sprinted down the hall, the envelope clutched tight. Against his chest, the future of a billionaire empire, pressed into the palm of a poor single dad who had never asked for any of it. As the elevator doors closed around him, sealing him away from Vivian's room, Elijah whispered to himself the same words his father once whispered on the hardest nights. "One more day. Hold the line." But now, holding the line meant something else entirely. It meant surviving. It meant protecting his daughter. And it meant preparing for a war he never saw coming.